Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our February Ask the Expert session for HR. So today we're going to be talking about agent intelligence. So a quick introduction of myself. So I'm Kyle Sanders. I'm a technical product manager here within our HR service delivery product at ServiceNow. And primarily, I work with customers around product adoption, which includes working with customers around workshops, roadmap conversations, understand how they're using some of the newer functionality, getting the feedback back into the product. And then also working within our HR community site that you're here on visiting today, as well as some of the Ask the Expert sessions for HR. So my experience, I've been with ServiceNow for over 2 years, but I've been in the HR technology world for over 10. So today we're going to talk about agent intelligence. So we'll start off with a product overview, just kind of reviewing what is the product, kind of from a high level. And then we'll dive into a demo, a live demo of showing how this works and how it can be used within your organization. And then we'll end with Q&A and plenty of time for questions as you kind of go through. But feel free to ask any questions within the chat and the YouTube comments. And that's a great way we'll make sure to address those as we go. So starting off with the product. So what is agent intelligence? So agent intelligence, it is ServiceNow's version of machine learning, or ServiceNow's branded machine learning. So it enables you to use machine learning algorithms to set values based on other data that you have within the system. And it's a great way to automate a lot of processes that may be manual today and help to route work faster. And one of the things that, because of that, one of the benefits is that you can handle higher volumes of incoming requests at lower costs by increasing that automation and using the machine learning data to actually help accelerate that. So you can reduce your task resolution times, your number required, especially manual interactions, and reduce the error rate with assignment as well. And then as it relates to agent, we released the ability to automate case assignment for any request that comes. So that's the use case we're going to be exploring today, and we'll be talking about further. So why do you need this? So in today's world, or I guess prior to introducing this in the London release, had to, if they were accepting cases through email, meaning that they didn't have a self-service port, but they still had kind of a generic HR email address that their employees could email to create cases. So in today's world, or in that world, your employees, they'd send an email, that the HR inbox, which then gets forwarded along to ServiceNow, and it goes and creates a case. And the important piece to call out here, in the scoped application, HR scoped application, we have a number of COEs. So we have these extended extensions of the general case, and that really allows you to define additional security, routing, a lot of automation with each one of those COEs. But the problem is these emails, everything's going to come in as a general HR case because request. We really just know the email. We don't have a way to really define what exactly does this person asking and make sure it goes in the correct COE. So that's one of the benefits we always promote with self-service, is being able to have, when an employee submits a request, we can automatically route it and we know which group it falls into, and then it can have the appropriate security as needed. So without that, customers were traditionally having someone who would manually triage these cases and really kind of work on separating those out, putting those into the appropriate grouping of what COE does it belong to, which HR service is this that the person's asking, and having someone really manually do that. And as you can imagine, that takes a lot of manual work to do, a lot of hours that are unnecessary, and a lot of that could be automated. And then it also really just delays the response, because it takes from the time the email comes in to the time the person goes and routes it to the appropriate group. That's time that could have been spent with the appropriate group in the first place working that case. So when we introduce agent intelligence, what we do is we take that existing model and we put in machine learning in between. So the email still comes into that generic inbox, but before it gets routed to a case, we put it against our machine learning and some of the data that you have already on your existing cases to see how does this match up based on your historical data to actually see where can we predict that this is actually going to fall. So in this example, we can go and put it into the different categories. And this really helps to, with the case, make sure it falls into the correct COE, the case is routed appropriately, and you have a quicker response. So one of the key characteristics is when you're starting to think about this and roll this out, you really need to have a good training data source. And the importance of that is your data needs to be complete, meaning that you have enough data represented in order for the machine learning to make a prediction. And at the same time, everything needs to be accurate. So everything needs to kind of have been moved or sit in the correct COE or the HR service today in order to actually analyze that information and be able to make that correct, the appropriate prediction. And then also it needs to be sufficient, meaning there has to be a good number of examples for the individual outcome. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the next couple slides in the demo as well. So getting started, in order to begin using the agent intelligence capability, you need to activate the agent intelligence plugin. So this is the plugin here in the screenshot. It's called Agent Intelligence, and we've got the name outlined here. You may need to install it using Hi by managing your instance and then activating plugins through there. And that plugin includes the HR case categorization. So that's the initial solution definition that we deliver with the London release. And then this also, it does require HR professional and HR enterprise licenses for using it within HR, and that's stated within the product documentation if you ever need to reference back to it. But I would recommend speaking with your account executive regarding licensing if you have any questions. And then just one thing to note is that if you're looking to start activating it or using it in the subprod instance for testing purposes, there are some additional steps that you'll want to review. And that's all listed in our product documentation as well. So as I mentioned, we do deliver a solution definition, which is how we kind of define and set up the use cases for the agent intelligence. So we do deliver one within HR, and that's activated and it's included automatically within the plugin when you first activate it. And once you activate it, you do need to train it based on your actual case data because every customer is going to be different. And when you're training this, it's actually training against your data. It's not incorporating it with any other customers. It's solely your data. So you do need to run that and actually train it based off of that. And to the point of the previous slides where we were talking about in order to have really complete, a good training data source, is that we recommend having at least 10,000 cases in order to have enough data that'll actually create a model where you can have good confidence with it being able to make predictions. And to the same point, the quality of the data also matters because you don't want to have, in this example, we say 5,000 records where they're all really kind of the same type of request because it's not really, the data model's not really going to be able to make much use of that and be able to predict kind of some of those outliers. So once the data model is trained, then you can then begin using it to auto-categorize those incoming emails that come in through the inbound actions. So when you're reviewing the solution definition, and we're going to do this in a demo as well, but just wanted to kind of highlight this from a high level. The solution definition is really what defines how the machine learning is going to essentially read your cases or how it's going to process them. So it starts with you select the name and the table that it's going to be associated to. So our training set is going to be on the HR case table. we're going to look at only cases where the short description and the description are not empty. And that's important because that's the source of the data that's going to be actually used to input into the actual data model, what it's going to analyze against. So you'll see here we have our input fields are the short description and the description. So those are the fields that it's going to try to match up. So when the short description and description kind of match certain trends, the output field will be the HR service. And the HR service is really what's determining the case, what the case gets associated to, and the service that's associated when it gets created. So instead of creating the case as a general inquiry HR service, it would get associated to whatever's appropriate based on the short description and description. And then you can define a training frequency, which we'll take a look at as we go through the demo. And then you just need to name it for searching purposes and then activate it in order to begin using it. And then once the data, there is a training set available and it's been trained, you'll actually see it down here in a related list. Then it'll go, and we'll dive into this a little bit further. But clicking into that solution will give you a breakdown of kind of the statistics of what it was able to determine based on all of the data that you have within your instance. So the precision, this represents the percentage of correct prediction and the accuracy. So it's essentially the accuracy level of it, and this will continue to increase as you have more data. And then the solution coverage is the percentage of cases that it can that will receive a prediction. So it's not going to predict every case if it doesn't have enough data. So if there's not enough data and it kind of falls out of this solution coverage area, what's going to happen is it'll actually still come over, it'll skip the machine learning side of it, or it'll run through machine learning. Machine learning will essentially say it doesn't have enough confidence in predicting this, so it'll remain a general inquiry case. So again, this will also continue to increase and change as the data model continues to be trained. So once you have once everything is set up and then you have the training model, it's trained, it's got a solution ready, your service is activated. There's a business rule on the HR case table called predict COE, service after insert. And this runs before any case is inserted on that table that comes from email. And because what it's doing is it's actually creating, if you think back to that diagram we were looking at, the emails coming in, the inbound action will create the case or kind of stage the case. But before it gets inserted into the table, this business rule will run. And if that matches these criteria for the business rule, it will send the short description and the description to the nearest training service, which is where the machine learning and the agent intelligence comes into play. So it's going to send that description and short description to the data center. And then when the training is complete in a matter of seconds, it's going to kick back and it will actually return back whatever your output was. So if you think back a few slides, our output was the HR service. So in that example, it's going to return the HR service, delete all of the data from the training service. So it's really temporary, but it's going to return that HR service back to you. And then this business rule initiates that request out to the training service as well as updates the HR service based on the results that come back. So then just some miscellaneous information before we jump into the demo is, as you can imagine, the predictive accuracy and coverage is really only as good as the training data. So I know we've reiterated this a few different times in a few different ways, but this is really important that you have a very good data set to begin with in order to actually accurately predict. And also the agent intelligence, if you want to turn it off, you can disable that for HR. There's within the properties. So under HR administration properties, there is a setting that we'll take a look at in the demo that can be used. It's just a true false checkbox, and that can be disabled to turn off all of the processing that we've just been talking about. And then there are some additional steps if you want to to actually clone it, and then this is all documented in our product documentation as well. But there is a system property that for the clone artifacts where you want to set to true if you're going to be cloning and wanting to test on your cloned instance as well. So that just copies over the whole, kind of the training data, so that you don't need to reset up that solution and retrain it on the subprod instance as well. All right, so we will jump into a demo if there are no questions.
Not seeing any questions.
Okay, great. All right, so we're in an instance. I'm actually going to start off with, we'll send an email because I want to show you kind of what this looks like before and after. So we're gonna send it to my instance here. We're going to say, I have an error in my paycheck. Sorry, I can't type with everyone looking at it. Okay. A really simple message that we want to send, but just saying I have an error in my paycheck. This is my description, and this is we're sending it over. This email address is going to go straight to my instance. Typically, you would have like a masked email, like a ask HR at whatever your organization is that gets forwarded to your instance. But for this example, we're going straight to my instance, and this is going to get processed by the inbound actions. So we're going to send this here. And while we wait for that to process, I'm going to go into the HR administration, the properties that I was talking about. So this is the property where I was saying if you want to have disable this, this is where you would do that. So right now you'll see that this is disabled. So the HR case machine learning is disabled. So the expected behavior is that email I just sent should create a case, but it's going to not use the machine learning. So it'll likely create it as a general inquiry. So I'm going to navigate over into the mailbox, look at my received messages. And then this may take a second. And this is going to end up creating the case. Like I was saying, it'll, just like traditional inbound actions and what you're probably using today if you're not using the machine learning capability, it's going to create the case, or it's going to create the case, directly from the inbound action, and it's going to create it on the HR case table associated to the general inquiry service. So in order to change that, you would then need to go and recategorize or retransfer that case to the appropriate HR service, which is then also the appropriate COE table as well. Of course, it's going to take a minute. So while we wait for this, I'm going to go into the agent intelligence. We'll take a look at the solution definitions. So you'll see for this solution definition, I'll have a number of them in here just because I have multiple things installed in my instance. So I have multiple ServiceNow applications and products. But you'll see there is the HR case categorization. So if we click into this, this is the solution definition that we were looking at in those screenshots. And you'll see this is the out of the box, what's been delivered. It's set up for HR case, again, talking about the short description, and then you have the input and output fields. Regarding the processing language, it can handle multiple languages. English is here as defined as the default, but you can also define additional languages that are supported. And we actually have some great documentation and some suggestions on this as well. So it will support it. So, but if you notice that your machine learning is lacking for a certain language, if it's not predicting it as much as you would have expected, you can actually create multiple definitions and just add a filter here based on the language and have multiple definitions, one defined for each processing language. And it's in the product documentation. So if you do encounter that, definitely look into the documentation and you'll see some information on that. And then you'll see we're going to output the HR service, but you have the ability to choose any other field as well. So if we also wanted to maybe define at some point, we wanted this to actually predict a different field in here. I think HR service makes the most sense, since that's going to drive all of these other fields, but it's definitely an option of something that you have the ability to do. And then the training frequency, so it's currently set to only run once, so the initial training opportunity. However, you can change this and increase the training so that as new cases are coming in, it's continuously learning. So we'll keep it at return once, but it's likely you'll probably want to change it to every 30 days or 60 days, just so it can continue to learn as you're getting new cases and really build that data model. And down here, you'll see this is the solution. So this is the data, the solution set, and the data set that was created within the data model. And you'll see all the details on this. So it's been trained twice. It's the second version. It was trained with 25,000 cases. And if we click into it, we can see some further information. So here's the solution precision and the coverage that we were discussing. And then even at a more granular level, we can see what's the confidence levels within precision and coverage for all of the different areas that it's been trained against. So you'll see like background check, or sorry, not background check, payroll discrepancy. That's likely where the one that I sent over should be falling. And you'll see that it's recommended that it's going to cover about 91% of requests that come in with this, and it will complete it with a 61% accuracy. And here's some general keywords that it's going to be looking to identify based off of what it's learned. So these are going to be used and factored into how it will likely categorize these, those cases that would come in here as the payroll. And if we click into it, you can actually see a distribution as well. So this kind of tells you that as the precision would increase, the coverage of the number of cases that you would be able to actually support and predict would decrease. So it kind of shows you how those are related. So we're going to go back into the mailbox to see if my email is processed. All right, great. So you'll see that here's the email I sent. It was processed. And you'll see it created this case. So this case has been created. We'll jump into my cases. And this is I just have these bookmarked as favorites, but this is just the general HR case section. So we're looking at the HR case, and you'll see this is the case that we just created, the 1052, and it created it as a general inquiry. So as we expected, created it as a general inquiry, receiving that because it wasn't using the machine learning. So now we're quickly going to go back into those properties. Again, same place I showed you, but I just have them bookmarked. We're now going to enable the HR case categorization. So all this is doing is now telling the system to actually use that business rule that when the case comes in, it's actually going to send it out to the training server, the service in the data center, to actually predict and use the model that we've trained against. So we're going to open this back up, send it to the same instance. I've got another window open. I'm just going to copy and paste everything that the previous message had, just so we make sure that it's similar messaging. All right, so still error in the paycheck. We're going to send it over to the instance, or send it over into those inbound actions. And now that we have the HR case auto categorization activated, the expected result is that it should be able to predict that this is a payroll discrepancy based off of the email and the messaging that I provided. I'm pretty sure I saved it, but let me just save it again. Now we're going to go back into the mailbox. Great. So you'll see that this is the most recent one, the one that was just sent over at 10:25 Pacific time. We'll click into this, and now an additional case has been created, 10:53. We'll go into 1053, into the cases. So case 1053, it's now categorized, it created a new one under payroll discrepancy. And if we click into this, you'll see here's my message, everything that came over, but it was given as the payroll discrepancy service, which then drove a few other items as well. So it automatically added the HR skill of payroll to it. It added some additional items. If we had a separate assignment group, right now I have everything configured for tier 1, that would have come in. But if we wanted this to go to a specific payroll group, that would be driven by the HR service as well. And if you look closely at the address bar to actually see what table this is on, this is now sitting on our payroll table, which is the COE. So the machine learning and the agent intelligence actually define the service which the service is tied to the COE. So the case automatically came in directly to the payroll case or the payroll COE, and there's no need to transfer the case. There's no need to make any changes with this. There's no concern about security of it going to a manual person kind of triaging those cases first that then needs to go to payroll, and maybe there's a potential sensitive data in there. So really make sure that those get categorized first. And now because it's here, it can get routed and payroll knows that this is for them immediately as opposed to having to wait for someone to move it over to them. So any questions? I know we showed a lot in a little bit of time here. So any questions related to the agent intelligence functionality or the screens that we were navigating with how it's all set up?
Let's see. I'm not seeing any on the live chat from YouTube, but let me check on the community. Alexandra asks, is this the only applicable for inbound actions from email? In other words, could it be used to help to better categorize the cases coming in from a general inquiry catalog item? Yeah, great question. So the solution definition that we deliver within London is specific to creating cases with creating them directly from an inbound action. So that was the most common complaint or the most common concern that our customers have right now, and one of the things that we wanted to address with the initial release. So there are a number of other use cases for agent intelligence, and I would love to hear if anyone else has other thoughts on how this could work or other areas that they'd like to explore this with. Please put them in the community, the chat. I would love to hear those and see how we can address those. But you can build these definitions for other use cases. So if you wanted to build it for automating something else or predicting a different piece of it, or you had mentioned not wanting to do it within inbound actions, if you wanted to just better categorize cases for general inquiry, you can still certainly do that. There's a little bit of setup because you'll have to create a new solution definition. Let me jump into it real quick. So you would need to go and create a new solution definition that would define what are the different input fields that you're going to accept and what are the output fields or what you're trying to get out of it. So if it's the same and you just want to predict it in other situations, you could certainly do that as well. The way that this solution definition is essentially triggered is that, like I was saying, there's a business rule on the HR cases. So let me kind of go a little into the weeds here for you. So this predict COE business rule, this is what's kind of determining or what's processing it over into the machine learning. And you'll see there's a piece of this that sends to get predictions. And we have a bunch of this information documented in our product documentation of what are the different APIs for it. But this could be used in a similar format if you're looking to use the machine learning in other areas. So if you wanted to go and, for example, predict or bring in some other information or even initiate the machine learning for the exact same situation, but maybe you just want to do it in a different location. So you could, if you can apply a business rule or some sort of the script to it, the server-side script, then you can also initiate and call the machine learning. So definitely want to hear your use cases and things that you're thinking about.
to see if that's something that we can continue to address in future releases as well. But it is flexible. It's not defined specific to the case categorization within emails. That's just kind of what we've defined as the first delivered solution.
Yeah, great question. Always feel free to rewatch and also post your questions on the community. And after we end this broadcast, Kyle can come back and answer them for you directly onto the community. All right, let's just wait one more second to see if anything else comes in. Here we go. Hi, what if you have the same word that means two different things in two languages?
Same word. Oh, yeah. So great question. So if you have, so it's going to use, it's not just kind of pulling keywords. So it will be using it kind of along with all the other words that are in there. So you may have, and the same goes for English words. So in our example, we may have had pay in some of our benefits questions, and we may have had it in some of these other areas that it's known for. And that's where the precision comes into play. So it's going to actually, based on some of the other context or some of the other words in there, it's going to try to find what's the best match for that. So if you have one word that's used across multiple languages and meaning different things, then it's going to kind of take into account everything else or all the other words that are part of that to actually use the machine learning to predict which one is the best fit. And as it receives more data, it will continue to adjust that. And if there's certain situations where you need to really kind of train it against certain different languages, and you notice that it's not predicting it accurately, that's where I was saying if you check out the product documentation, that gives a little bit more information on the two different options you have, one of them being creating multiple definitions for each language.
It's really fascinating. Okay, just waiting one more second.
Sure.
Let's see if we've got anyone else typing a question. Well, we can always have them posted on the community, of course. So, Kyle, how do you feel? You want to just say goodbye for this time and see everybody back next month?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. So yeah, great call out is that we do these monthly. So
got one more. If you define HR channel for specific email, such as payroll.company.com connected with a specific category and subcategory, could you define if your AI will not touch?
Can you read that? I think I'm following, but I just want to make sure.
All right. If you defined HR channel for specific email,
yep,
and it says payroll@company.com, connected with specific category and subcategory, could you define if your AI will not touch?
Got it. Okay, yeah. So it sounds like they have multiple emails that are set up. So maybe you have like payroll at organization and benefits at organization, and you wanted to kind of exclude those. So you can certainly do that. What's happening is it's coming over as they all come in through inbound actions as normal. You probably have a different inbound action set up for each one of those, or maybe you have one that's just saying if it came from here, do this. If you came from here, do this. But most likely, I assume you probably have multiple actions, and then it's still kind of doing the overall from a high level. It goes to the inbound action and tries to create a case. It's just you already know information when it's coming over. So it may already be coming over as payroll instead of that general inquiry. So one other option is we may need to modify this business rule, because this is saying every case that comes in that's coming from email should run against. So if that's not true, you may want to say, just add another option and say that the HR service is general inquiry. So, or you may want to put some sort of script in there to say that maybe if you have payroll configured already, maybe you want to go and say that you can go and define saying that the HR service, the topic category, topic detail, you could say the topic detail category is not, I don't know, let's see if I have anything. So payroll administration. So That way it just excludes that from actually running through this business rule, which is what's bypassing the machine learning. So that's kind of one way you could get around some of those kind of exceptions to it if you already have some of that automation in place already.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, while we wait for questions, another great point that Lisa brought up is that we do these monthly. So keep an eye on the community. We'll continue to post these out there. And if you have any topics you'd like to see, certainly let us know. Post it on one of the, post it on this, either any of the Ask the Expert sessions, but we're monitoring those. So if you have any other suggestions for future topics, feel free to provide those as well.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
I'm not seeing any come in, but sometimes it takes a little while to type
Yeah.
while you're watching. Let me refresh on the community side. I think it's just because you provided so much great information. People are like, okay, now how am I going to do this? All right, I think that's good for today. Hal, thank you so much. And we look forward to your next session.
Yeah, thanks everyone. All right. Bye.